even if you're totally unattractive to the person of interest you have, I think the more direct you are with your intention, the more respect that you'll have after the fact of it. I think if you allow a lot of uncertainty to build and like this thing of like, oh, I'm gonna try to do this thing, oh, but I don't want to do too much because da da da. I think if you just put it there, let the rejection happen if that's what's gonna come of it, and then move on from that, that is 1,000 times better than spreading out that uncertainty over the course of weeks, months, might be. Because if anything, that just makes you come off as an indecisive, scared, timid, unconfident man. And we heard in various ways, these girls love boldness. They like confidence, you know? And even if you get rejected, at the very least, they'll say something in the way of, I wasn't really feeling him, but he was bold. And I like that about him.
And I think one thing too is sometimes, I think with certain things, the more you look, the less you see. And I'm not gonna say this for everyone, but like in our case right here, I thought she hated my guts.
Esther does give very hate your guts vibes, right?
Not exactly.
Until you get to know her.
It's the ugly F. It's horrible.
But in an example,
I promise I'm nice.
If I chose to go about it as a like, you know, oh, she doesn't like me, you know, we wouldn't be dating right now. Only to come to find out that that was not the truth. So I think, you know, you get in these juvenile tit for tats, you know, you both can overthink it to the point where now you're uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable, you're awkward. When you're awkward, it's taken the wrong way. And it can be perceived as dislike. So be upfront. And accept the no if it happens.
Yes, that's the biggest thing.
I think that you don't know what you don't know. And in the case of like Nick and I thinking that I didn't like him, but I hated him. Not even I don't like him, I'm not interested. Like I hated him, like I dislike him. That's so crazy. That's so crazy to me. That like when we talked about it, I was like, what? How did you think that? Because it was just me being shy and me being like purposely reserved. Because there was a risk with being around him. Like that was risky to me. So I'm like, this is a risk. Like I don't want to. Versus like with you, with my friend, I'm just gonna be whatever because I don't care about how the other person is receiving the interaction. So I will say, you know, be careful to all the guys. Just like Nick said, just ask if you're interested. Just ask, and you don't lose anything because how a girl acts around you isn't always the best indicator. Like. You just never know. Like, I know for me, the concept of dating and relationships can bring so much anxiety that it really does take. I really do think it takes like months to get to like, oh, let's just maybe relaxing now a little bit. Like she's relaxed, and that's real, and that's me. It has nothing to do with Nick or anyone. It just that's just how it is. So I think everyone's just different. You just gotta.
Yeah, I think I think. That is a great point there in that either way, no matter how outgoing she is or how shy and reserved she is, you only lose by being like this like subtle, like indirect person. Like whether she's super shy or whether she's super outgoing, you as the guy, you just gotta do your thing and like that's your biblical role, by the way. Your biblical role is to say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is my intention. You know, let it be known, and then do that. Once you've done your part, and you know, I think this is where now I'm going to give you guys a little bit more help here. This is where you say, I've done my part of it, and now you let the girl reciprocate something on her end, because you know, there's definitely a thing of like, oh, I want the guy to like pursue me. I'm going to play hard to get, and that is such That's such BS, man. Like, if you run into a girl and she's doing that kind of game, that means she's too immature to even be worth like pursuing in that way. Because a girl that recognizes a quality guy that has attractive traits that sees a person of good value, if they're gonna take the time to go and turn it into this gamified state of being for the both of y'all. That's it's not worth your time. Like you're like the biggest thing for a guy that you have to keep in mind, guys, is that you're supposed to be on a mission. As Christ followers, me and Nick, as guys, we know that we have a certain mission. Our mission is to learn Scripture, build ourselves up in Christ, to prepare ourselves for the challenges of the world, and to figure out how to become effective communicators so that we can spread the gospel to fellow brothers and to be brothers to one another, to reinforce for all the battles and the woes that happen. That's a single guy's mission in life right there from a biblical perspective. If you're of the secular world, your mission is to figure out how to be as healthy as possible, how to make as much money as possible, how to become as charismatic as possible, how to this is something that's a little bit newer that I don't think a lot of guys are taking note of. But the first three things I mentioned, as far as charisma, money, fitness, those are hyper important. But then the next thing that you should be doing is you should be building up your ability to communicate well. And that's different from charisma, because you can be charismatic just from having a decent smile and knowing how to have conversation, but that's a different skill set than knowing how to actively listen to somebody and how to make that person feel comfortable and know how to respond to the different cues that they have. So like these are the different skills that from a secular perspective, you should be building up and learning to have. And if you are becoming off mission in your pursuit of the female persuasion, then you're just losing in every direction. And I lost my train of thought, guys. Where'd I come from with this?
It's okay, you were talking about the difference between secular world and then biblically how a man should prepare and build themselves up and their responsibility.
Yeah. So the whole point of that whole tangent is either way you cut it, you as a man, you're on a mission. And you don't have time for a girl that wants to play hard to get.
Oh, here I go. Can I interject?
Do it.
I think this whole time for like the past 5 to 10 minutes, I've been thinking of the fact that women also have a responsibility in this. And this is where your whole talk about secular world versus biblically, or what are the roles, what are the responsibilities. I think in the church we've sometimes done a disservice to women in saying, don't you worry about it at all, just don't do anything at all, let him come to you, and you're your princess, your daughter of God, you should be pursued, and all of these things. And yes, but also, what is actually biblical and what's not? And so if you're not going to wait around for an employer to come to you and give you an interview, why are we just idly, and yes, I do believe that a man should pursue, a man should, there is that component. Also, you have a responsibility to say yes, to say no, to place yourself in situations where you can meet godly men. Like, if you ain't meeting the man in your house with your hair in a bun and, eating Doritos on your shirt. Like, you're just not, you need to find ways to put yourself out there and be the kind of person that, you want to date too. So even the responsibility of like saying yes or no. Some women are too scared to even be in a position, like me included. That was me. That was definitely me. I don't even want to say yes or no. That's like all of that is just so scary to me. It really can be a step of faith and responsibility for women to just make a decision, yes or no. Are you gonna go on the date? Great. Are you gonna go on a second one? Great. Like to just, you have that responsibility. You owe it to the other person to communicate well, to speak well, talk about your intentions too. You have a role here too. Do you want to get married? You were asked on a date. You said yes. But do you want to get married? Do you want, I think women can have a role in this. Not necessarily lead the relationship. And I think that's one way that our secular society, in a small way, they kind of get it right when they give women more responsibility playing the game. I don't think God looks at that and he's like, oh gosh, what is this woman out here doing? I don't think there's anything wrong with getting on a dating app. Like, take responsibility. What do you want for your life? And then put yourself in situations where you can be pursued.
I think you just hit a huge, such an important thing. Like, princess syndrome is definitely a thing, waiting in the tower for somebody to come and beat the dragon and conquer every demon that's below in your chambers and whatnot before they finally get to you. Like, at a certain point, I definitely think you're right. The ladies have to kind of battle some things out in their own right and conquer some of their own fears and demons, anxiety, shyness. Like, dating it's a scary thing. Like, you got this person who you may or may not like in that way, and you don't know what their intention is with you, and hopefully somewhere in there you're communicating these intentions to each other, and they're coming out and being received properly, and like the whole time you're just hearing all these things that now you're trying to figure out what bits do I use from all these hundreds of people and all these thousands of sources that I've heard about ever since I was a kid. Like, what do I do now? Like, do I twirl my hair more, or do I like look at him with big eyes, or do I like hide my head? And for a guy, we're like, okay, do I like open her door, or is she gonna be like, oh, how dare you? I'm a strong, independent woman. I can open my own doors. Do you pay the whole bill? Do you pay half the bill? Is it empowering to allow her to pay half the bill? Is it insulting if she pays half the bill? She's not gonna think, he made pay half the bill. Now, he's not a man. He's not. So these are all things that like, these are scary things now that on guys' side we have to think about, and then on ladies' side, like you guys. I think you made a great point when you said that in the secular world, like they told girls, hey, go talk to that guy. Like be willing to send the message. Be willing to tell him I'm attracted to you. And in the church world, it's so much like, I think the idea of purity, which is a beautiful thing, allows for a lot of, and encourages a lot of passivity. You guys know the word I'm talking about. And it discourages proactivity in certain ways. And I would never say that you should be the first one to make a move, but I would definitely say, like, let's say you were talking to a guy and you were feeling shy for a moment, and like, let's say you rejected him when he made his first approach. Like, I definitely do think that it would be on you to then say, hey, we had this conversation and I was really nervous, but like, I think I might be interested in like trying something out with you. And I don't think that's like a step too far if you have already communicated to him, hey, like I'm like no before. I think that's something healthy. What do you guys think?
Can I say something? Yeah, so I can share about my experience because I can relate about, approaching the dating as a Christian. Because in my case, when I moved here to Florida, I was like, okay, I've always wanted to get married, so I knew that eventually I was going to meet somebody. But I think that I was approaching it more like, I'm going to let God, take control. When the person comes, it's going to come and I'm going to know because, God is going to tell me. And, 1 year passed by and I was like, okay, I'm in this new church, I'm going to meet somebody. But then nothing happened. I was like, okay, I'm in this new job, I'm going to meet somebody. But then nothing happened. I'm like, okay, God,
Preach. Tell them.
I'm praying, I'm waiting. So I think that in that stage, God allowed me first to work on myself because there's also some purpose in your singleness. It's a great time for you to improve on yourself, improve your relationship with God. But as they were talking, it's also about intentionality. So I started also praying, for my husband. And I was trying to be intentional on the traits that I was looking for. But again, time was passing by and again, no boyfriend, no husband. So that's when I said, okay, I think that I need to do a little bit more than just like waiting here to somebody to come and suddenly, my perfect match. And that's when after talking with some of my friends and some other people that were having a relationship through a dating app, I was like, I'm always working, so I thought that using the dating app will facilitate me, finding somebody. So just allowing myself to put myself out there, I think that led to something, here, beautiful. So definitely taking that step of, okay, if this is what I want, then, what can I do to make it happen?
Yeah, and Shelley, I think your situation is so good because I think you are like right at that like in between thing of like kind of the modern woman, but also you still had like your relationship with God and your understanding with that to understand like, okay, like God's gonna do it, but I have to play my role in it. And there was that fine like line of it because, and I say like in a lot of ways you represent that perfect in betweenness because you did what a lot of girls want to do now, where it's the thing of I want to give myself a good career. I want to be able to be financially independent, to be able to support myself, to be able to have a life where I'm not totally dependent on a man's income. And you did that, but then you also recognized, like, oh man, like, just sitting here praying and like waiting for somebody to come isn't gonna work. I need to like figure out what I'm gonna do, and I need to start taking steps in action towards that. And so you had a certain list or trait that you had, or traits that you had, but you maybe weren't like hyper strict on those things. On dating apps, I think it's something crazy like 60% of girls on dating apps select for purely 6 feet and above guys. And so me as a 5'7" guy, I would have been kicked out a long time ago. I would have been kicked out 5 inches early. And so like between 6 inches, some girls will select for a certain income, and then on top of that, adding in the religious thing, but you allowed for some wiggle room in there. Esther's chomping at the bit.
I'm excited because I think I have a thought, but you just
go for it, Esther. Go ahead.
No, you want to finish your thought?
No. It's just saying like, so between you, like you realized like, oh man, I needed to start doing something. You did something about it, and then you gave some wiggle room. You didn't have 15 standards that you refused to compromise on. Like your biggest standard was man of God. And then from there, you built out after that. It wasn't 6'3", making at least $140,000, and then man of God.
My first thought is that this concept of finding someone with these characteristics and these lists that we make, and we want somebody who looks like this and acts like this and has this kind of job, and some of them are even great things like I want somebody who's really patient, really this. All of this we forget is very modern. It's a very modern idea. You know, just maybe 50, 100, 150 years ago, we were not able to choose like that. As a society, as a culture, we weren't choosing. It was, your family thought this person would be good, and the other family agreed, and they married you, and it was a benefit to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very different society, obviously, that has its, marriage was never, this sounds bad, but marriage in the Bible in biblical times was never for love. It wasn't, you didn't love and then get married, it was you get married and then you learn to love the person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy, and we think, in our very modern world, we're like, oh my gosh,
that sounds
so,
awful,
that's horrible.
like torture.
Marriage, that's horrible. And, you can debate all day long about a lot of the intricacies with that, but the point is that we can, as a society, we can be on the other end of, sometimes we're just too picky. Like, I really do think that we've never required so much of a person as we do now in 2023. I mean, they have to do everything with us. They have to have all the same hobbies. They have to look like us, not look like us. They have to think like us and be our BFF. Like before we even know them, our first date we have to be best friends. And I don't know. I think we've been conditioned to just require so much of this person that we expect to feel the love before we even have the chance to act in loving ways. You really don't know love until you're married and you're like years in. And that's just my thought is like, I don't know. Like yes, you can love a person before then, but just everything, as we talk about dating, I think it's important that there's some things on your list that you're just gonna have to be like, okay, God knows better. Like they're not gonna meet every. I don't know, Shelly, you can speak into this. Be like, Devontae probably doesn't have everything on your list. He might have a lot. Right? Like, but there's even some good qualities and good things to desire. The other person was not made for you. Like, some people are gonna be like, oh my God, no, God has
my soulmate.
The other person, Nick's sole purpose on this earth, it was not. God did not create Nick for me. He created Nick Maybe. I don't know. You know, I think, and Nick, actually, you might have some different thoughts on me. I think there are some fundamental things that surrounding this, you might have different ideas. But for me, just because God knows who your future spouse is, right? Like God knew that I would date Nick. God knew these things. It doesn't mean that we were predestined, because then there's no choice in being predestined for one another. I think choice is the most beautiful thing on earth. I'm like more convinced of that than ever. Like, I don't know. So those are my thoughts. All that to say, I think as women, even men, be careful of what your expectations are. Make sure you allow room for the other person to be their own person. And the beauty of that is two completely different people blending together, and that's love.
I like it. Nick, she had mentioned you might have some different thoughts on something. I was curious to dive into that and see, like, do you think something else in there?
I mean, the idea of thinking someone was made for you is incredibly selfish. To think that their whole sole purpose is to serve you in that manner, it's just like, no. I think when it comes to soulmates, I mean, I think there's hundreds of different soulmates out there for one particular person. So, I mean, the perfect person you may never work out with, I think there's another perfect person out there for you. And when I say perfect, meaning a good match. I don't think there's one person out there for everyone. I think there's many different people out there that can give you exactly the life that God has for you, that you'll be happy with.
Yeah. I would say I agree with that. I think, like you said, maybe you were predestined. Well, not necessarily, like you said, there's the choice, and I think God will place people, different possibilities of potential partners that you would have access to, and then He'll let you choose, okay, here's someone that you can choose to, you know, have these experiences with and learn from certain things in there, and then based off of the choices you two make, y'all could be the perfect fit. But also, if you steer away from my paths, then you definitely probably will end up with that person. And there was the point that Esther had made on the list of things that would be desired, and like, so Nick, from your end, like, I know at a certain point in time for me, I had a certain set of things that I was like, okay, if I'm gonna get me a girl and I'm gonna attract her, these are the certain things that I need to have. I'm curious, and at a certain point, I actually had a switch where I said, okay, these are the things that I was focused on, and this is how I'm now pivoting and changing my strategy. And I'm wondering for you, did you ever have a moment in your strategy where you changed, or like, what was your mental process in that?
When looking for someone?
Right.
I would actually say the list of what I'm looking for in a person is actually quite small. I would say the list of what I'm looking not for is probably bigger. So, like in example with her, the first thing I noticed about her was she's an attractive woman. Like, the first thing I noticed about her was not how much she loved God. I saw her.
That's real. That's so real.
I saw her and I said,
You know what? I'm sorry. I never went back to that area where we both talked about what we look for in women, and that was a whole piece we were supposed to return to.
Maybe you can return to it.
oh yeah, so the first thing I noticed for her was, dang, she's fine. But again, I still have my list of, hey, I want someone who loves God. So first off, she looks good. Next thing, okay, does she love God? If she don't love God, okay, she looks good, but it ain't for me. Sorry, keep it moving. But okay, she looks good. She loves God. Okay, well, let's have a conversation with her. We finally ended up speaking one day, and like, oh, like, she's actually fun to talk to. So it's more, I would say I'm more so looking for red flags. And loves God is probably one of the biggest things. Outside of that, I don't have really, I would say, a bunch of like, oh, they need to be this, or this. I would say, other than loving God, I would say having some kind of sense of purpose in life. If their whole sole purpose is to just like, I don't know what to do. I just want to do nothing. I don't know. Like to me, that is such like I don't know. It's boring.
That's gotta probably be the most unattractive like feature a person can have in general, right? Like, I'm just here, I'm just hanging out.
Like if your goal in life is like, hey, I want nothing more to be than a stay-at-home mom. Awesome. I actually don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to go out there and be a doctor like Shally. Awesome. But if like I don't really know what I want to do, I'm just kind of floating. It's like, okay, like if there, to me, I'm looking for some kind of purpose, and whatever that purpose is, and I think whatever you choose is just as valuable, but that has to be there. I think the last thing I was looking for was some sort of sense of confidence. I wanted someone who was not afraid to look me in the eye and say, you're wrong. I don't want to be in an echo chamber. I find that to be lonely. So as much as I want someone who thinks the same way as I do, I also want someone who's unafraid to be like, no, you're wrong. So I would say those three things were the only things I was looking for. And then other than that, just like red flags. Is she abusive? Is she manipulative? Does she lie? I was looking more for that stuff, and if that stuff wasn't there,
It's just like, I'm shooting from the hip on that one.
yeah. So if the few green flags were there and none of the big red flags were there, I was happy. And with that, there's always something wrong with someone. Like everyone's got their flaws, and finding out what those flaws were and deciding whether or not I was content with those flaws. So yeah, I wouldn't say I have any kind of formula. I would say really winged it. I had a very bare bones of what I was looking for and what I wasn't looking for, and I was happy with whatever that turned out to be.
Okay. I like it.
Oops, sorry. Can I share one quick thought?
Go for it.
I think too, just along the lines of purpose, like just like Nick said, whatever you choose to be, you know, work toward it. And I think even if you're in a season of college, say you're a freshman in college and you're dating, whatever, it's okay to be like, I just have no idea what I'm doing, but you're working towards something. The point is that if you don't feel like you have purpose, you're figuring it out. And that's attractive. It's that sense of I'm always looking, and it doesn't have to be tied to your job either.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
Just like, you know, if I can be lost in what I want to do with my job or my career or whatever, and still know like, okay, I'm still I don't know, I feel I'm a follower of Jesus, and I feel very called to mentor people around me. That's very generic, but it's very purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's okay.
Absolutely.
I think God's purpose can be way bigger than we think. So just like Nick may not feel like, oh, his job is his whole world, is my whole purpose. Like there's way more that Nick is about, that Nick loves, and that Nick feels very passionate about, and it has nothing to do with his job or his season of life. It's just different things in ways that God has wired him, and it's his job to pursue those things, and those gifts, and those, you know.
Yeah. I think that's very accurate. I think if you're a guy or girl and like your thing is you love making art out of trash, like soda cans, and that's like your thing, and you're like a hardcore nerd for that, I think if you have like a love of that, and like you're doing that, and you're like, oh, I want to figure out how to do this, and I want to teach people how to do this, and maybe I want to like submit it to some museums. Like it doesn't have to be the thing that makes you a ton of money. It doesn't have to be the thing that you're the best at. But like as people, what we want to be around, we want to be where the party is. We want to be where the energy, the excitement is, where the feeling of goodness is and positivity is. Nobody is actively seeking the negative or the void or the lack thereof. People don't like to be in a place of scarcity. It's one of the worst things that we can think of, and one of the worst things we can be around. So as people, we need to realize that not only do we want to be around the people who make us feel good, feel happy, stimulate the mind, get the endorphins flowing, get the norepinephrine and the epinephrine and the oxytocin. Like, we want to be around people that stimulate these things in us. And if we want to be around those people, then in some facet of our life, maybe we're an introvert, but there needs to be something that we have that we just become like, that's the go-to person on that thing, and this person is could easily talk about an hour and a half on that thing. And like if you lack that thing, then I think that's a very clear indicator that you need to put aside the idea of trying to talk to somebody in any capacity as far as building a relationship goes. And you need to explore the things of your heart and the things of your soul that resonate with you, that create that happiness. Because, this is kind of where I'm going to switch a little bit more to be on the guys' side. Like, guys, one of the most attractive things that you can do is have a life that's interesting for yourself. Like, when I asked Nick the question of like, what did you do in your strategy in there? And for me, I didn't have necessarily a strategy. I think what a lot of guys do, they'll set up a dating profile and maybe they'll like talk to the girls around them, whatever the case might be. But I think that, I think what a lot of guys are doing now is they're understanding, okay, I have to like have some type of money income thing going on. I need to be going to the gym. I was going to the gym hardcore. And then I was just kind of like doing the things that I thought were healthy for me. And then at a certain point, I said, okay, I had a friend who told me, I go on the dating apps and I do the free swipes and then I just move on with my day afterwards. And like, I don't know why that revolutionized my mind, but there was a part of me where he said that, I'm like, wait, so you don't like spend a whole bunch of time working on this and you're not like you're not paying for a premium account, you're just doing it all free? And then I said, hold on a second. So like, wait, I've been like, I was shy about like the whole Jesus thing and like what I was doing. And, as guys, we kind of think, oh, let's just slap up a photo of us like at a party with a bunch of our friends. It might be a little blurry, but I said, you know what? I'm going to express the most, the things that take up the most time in my life, that's what I'm going to put on my dating profile. And I'm going to apply his method of just let me get on, do what's free, get off, and then handle everything else that I have to do that I've been doing. And so I said, I'm in dance class. I'm going to have a photo of dance because that takes up 2 out of the 7 days of my week. That's a considerable amount of time. And I do it for 3 hours on each of those days. I go to church a lot and I volunteer. I'm going to have some photos up with me with some of my church buddies, and I'm going to have some photos at volunteer things because I spend a good amount of 2 to 3 days of that a week is what I was doing at the time. And then I spend time with my family, so I had some photos of family. And I think as you guys are doing things, and if you're pursuing things and you're trying to put things out there for God to do something with, like Shally said, when she saw my thing, Shally will say, like, when she saw my photos, she's like, he's okay. She didn't think I was that attractive. I was shocked. I thought my photos were great. I thought my profile was great. But
what I said to him is that what caught my attention, it wasn't like his physical traits. It was most of all the personality I was getting from his profile. But then when I met him in person, I was like, oh wow, he's actually attractive. And I told him that it was just that his features were not being fair, to his traits. But yeah.
That's so crazy too, because like I swear, when I was doing that profile setup, I thought I was hitting all of it. But the point is, like she just said, like the personality shined through in it, and I had certain passion factors, and I said, let me emphasize and put those out, and just put the whole package of who is this guy right here, who am I, and they can choose from that. And then, like when I started getting matches, like I think guys, a lot of like, let me give you some game. If you're a guy and you're spending more than 30 minutes, no, if you're spending more than 15 minutes a day messaging a single girl on a dating app, you got L-Riz. You're losing. You need to, when you're on that thing, those conversations need to be short and sweet. You need to say, hey, blah, 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 blah. You know, have a quick little bit of interesting conversation. And then, like, as I was doing my thing on the dating apps, I was very quick to let the ladies that I was talking to know, hey, look, you know, you're really cool. I'm not really a get to know you over message type of person. I prefer to set up a date and like meet you in that form. And I did that probably after about 4 or 5 messages. And then either it was going to be, okay, cool, I'm down. Like, what do you have in mind? Or it's going to be, nah. And then at that point, I'm just like, okay, like, that's going to go to the back. Like, I'm not trying to spend half of my day or even a tenth of my day on the dating app. It's like, let's set something up, let's make something happen. And then on Shally's end, she was just receptive to it. So like that there again goes that thing of you do your part as the guy, you say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. I don't really like to do this message and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then on the girls' end, you say, you know what? Yeah, let's give it a shot. I don't really like his pictures. He's not as attractive as I would like, but I'll meet him, sure. And then maybe you'll show up and, you know, he'll have on some better clothes than he had on in his photos or whatever. Or he won't be wearing a green wig. Like I was in one of my photos, you know, so, and that's another thing too, like, if your photos look goofy, like, make sure you show up looking good, you know, I had the curls on point that day, I had on a good fit, you know what I'm saying, so, you gotta work with your assets in there. You guys, any thoughts?
Or game on, like, a dating profile?
On dating profile or in person?
I've never used a dating profile, but I think when I've seen like a couple people, like friends and stuff, and I don't think a lot of people know how to put the correct photos up. Put up one photo of just you, no more. Every photo you have has an opportunity to tell the other person or other people about you.
Bingo.
So have one with your family. Okay, this guy lives with his family. That's it. No more family. That's it.
Yeah.
Put up a photo with you and a bunch of friends. Okay, this guy is not a loner or weirdo that no one likes. This person has friends. Okay, no more.
Put up a photo.
Not a girl.
With you and a few girls.
No.
No.
What?
No.
That's gonna.
No.
I would immediately swipe whatever way it shouldn't be.
What?
To the no
Especially
side.
if they were like
Yeah.
profile picture with a girl.
No.
Because that just tells them like I'm not special.
Lay up.
I'm just gonna be another girl to put on another dating profile pic.
Here's the thing. The reason I disagree with all of you, I think girls are more attracted to guys who have the ability to be around girls. I don't think girls want to go on a date with a guy that can't be around girls.
No. Because what you're showing a woman when you have a picture with 3 girls on your 2 on one side, 2 on the other is not, oh, they have the ability to be respectful around women. It's, oh, they've got women that like that's they're doing whatever with these women.
I mean, I think like I was saying, like each picture tells a story of something, some kind of feature about you, and for whatever reason, these women are special enough that you chose to put them on your profile for dating. It's like, okay, these aren't his cousins. These side chicks, like what are they? And like it's a weird thing to clarify in like your description.
Well, so this is interesting because I actually had a photo like that on my profile and Shally saw, and it was me with 3 girls from a church service event, and it was the same photo that I had on a green wig about. So Shally, like, if you're giving such a clear like no, why was that not like a red flag for you?
Honestly, probably the wig.
Well, first it wasn't like the profile pic. It wasn't like the first pic. And then I could tell that it was like church related based on everything you had. Like, and you were, it was noticeable that it was like in a public place, not so much like in the party setting. It was like you were doing like, or some type of community service or sometime with the church, and that was okay. In the way the photo was arranged, it wasn't like being like very friendly with these girls. It was just like we were just having a good time together.
Okay, so maybe that is an important factor there, right? Like, if it's like you're not gonna put up a photo where it's like you and 3 or 4 girls and you guys are obviously at a club, at a bar, or it's like you up at a hookah lounge, for example. That would be like, oh, is this like dating all these girls? Like in that photo that I'm talking about, it was one where like I had a green wig on. We all had on similar shirts, so like clearly it was some type of event type of deal. So I'll give that caveat, sure.
But you were talking about women like women who, no, sorry, women like men who can get other women, which doesn't match the reason you get, like maybe some scientific thing, there's some pheromone or something, I don't know, who knows, but there's probably better photos you can put up there. I just think with your limited amount of time to pitch yourself, any duplicate photos, if you have 2 different photos of you and family, it's a waste of time. Like, you wasted a photo because you told the same story twice.
Yeah.
So see how you can diversify. If you got a hobby, get a photo of you in the hobby. You know, a little dog pic. Don't put 2 dog pics. Just keep puppies. And then I think like you said, get out of the app as soon as you can. As soon as you get a match or whatever, and you're talking to someone, get them in person. You're just wasting your time otherwise. The sooner you can figure out whether or not this person is potential or doesn't, the more likely, like the less likely you're to waste time. If you spend 3 days or a week or so and they have just talking to each other,
yeah,
and then you get into the person, like they, I don't know, have a weird laugh and that bothers you for no reason, and you don't want to date them anymore. Like, you just wasted a week. If you can get them on a date the next day or two, and like, oh, they're not for me, you just saved yourself and them all the time of wasted.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. If, let's say you're a guy and you're on an app, or you're a guy and you're in person, and like you just have absolutely 0 prospects. Like, first of all, I want everybody to know that you never have actual 0. There's always someone that is interested in you. It's just a matter of, would you find that person attractive? Like, even the guy who smells bad, who doesn't shower enough, who has an oily face, there is a girl around somewhere that thinks that you are the cutest thing. The question, and similar on the ladies' side, there's always, for the ladies' side, it's like there's always 10 guys that think that you are the cutest thing. There's always somebody. It's just a matter of, is that what you will take, or are you going to be more picky? And so when you sit in your loneliness, you have to also consider, like, how picky am I being about it? And like, is how picky I'm being worth it? Or do I need to adjust my strategy a bit? And speaking of adjust strategy, I just remember there was a certain part of like, I adjusted my strategy at a certain point. So like I said, my thing, I had focused on the exercise thing and the like diving deep into church and like trying to make something of a good career. And at a certain point, I'm like, man, these muscles are getting bigger, but my inbox ain't filling up. And so I said, I think I need to spend some time like learning how to communicate more intentionally and not having things be in so much of a shadowy mist. And so when I did get onto that apps, that piece of, get on the apps and then don't be on there for forever, that was something that was very foreign to me, and it was very new, and it felt weird to like be like on this thing, talk to somebody for 2 or 3 messages, and then be like, well, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Like, it was so foreign. I felt like, I think that sometimes we as guys, we hear, oh, get to know the girl, like talk to them first, see if you're compatible. And it's like, those things are right, but there's a place and a space and a setting for that. And to do it in an online form, whether it's through text messages, social media messages, dating apps, the place where you get to know a person is not through some form of texting. It is in person. And that was the switch I had to make, was to realize it's time, like, move it off, and like, even to the point where I'm like, I refuse to talk to a girl for more than 10 messages on here. Like, if it goes to that 10th message, no matter how much we're vibing, I'm killing it. I was that, and I did that a few times. I'm like, this is clearly not going anywhere. Like, she's playing games. there was one girl that I thought was really attractive, and I'm like, she's like, oh, well, we'll see, we were trying to schedule something. It didn't work a few times. And then she's like, oh, yeah, well, we'll see what happens. And I'm like, it's going to take more intentionality than we'll see what happens. And I was like, you seem like a great person. I wish you the best, but I don't think that's, that attitude of it is not something that I'm about. And on the converse, when I met Shally, one of the biggest things that stood out to me about her was like, on our first date, she noticed that I had like dry eye and stuff like that. And then on our second date, this girl showed up with like eye drops and like napkins for me to like take care of my eyes. And I'm like, what the heck?
Bug spray.
She had bug spray too.
Well, our first date,
that's the point.
we went to a dog park. It was actually before the first date, but I remember talking. She's like, I have like an allergy to like mosquitoes. So like when I get bit by mosquitoes, like I swell up. I showed up to that first date. It might have been the second, I remember, but it was one of the first dates.
What's our second date?
Second date, I showed up with bug spray. So the best of the best. And I hate.
And see that's the type of that's the type of proactivity that it takes to communicate to a person, not in words but in action. Like, hey, I'm serious about this. And guys on your side, here's some more game, right? Guys, I guarantee that when you think of dating a girl, you think like, oh, we're gonna be 50-50 in it. We're gonna, she's gonna have an equal say of this and that. Here's the thing: when you are first like setting kind of the precedent of like how things are gonna be, you're the person that needs to suggest, hey, let's get ready for that date. But when it comes time to plan the date, don't sit here and try and plan out every aspect of the date with the girl. Have some preconceived options of what exactly you're gonna do. Do you want to be, and I would recommend a low-cost date, offer her to go meet up at a coffee shop and have a drink of coffee. Offer her to go to a park and do something low cost. Offer to do this. And you know what? If you want to qualify what to do, what I would ask, I would say, okay, are you feeling something for it? Are you more of an outside person or inside person? Okay, cool. Shally wanted to meet outside. I said, okay, cool. She wants to have an outside date. That told me, okay, either something like a picnic, bike riding, kayaking, swimming, and have, rock climbing. Have like 4 or 5 different options. But of those options that you have, then go and say, okay, we can do this thing right here. And wait for them to say, oh, I don't really like that thing, or I'm not too good at that. Or like, if you really want to be hardcore with it, don't even say what it is. Just say, okay, cool. This is the thing that we're gonna do. This is the address. You need to show up in clothes that are breathable, that you don't mind sweating in.
Hey girl I've never met, show up this unknown address. And don't worry about what you're doing. Also, do yourself a favor and don't tell anyone.
But you know what's crazy, bro?
I'm a big fan.
Bro, Shally, I love you. And I say this not to dishonor you, okay? But I would say out of the 9 times that I did this exact thing, everyone that I met in person, it flowed in the exact same way. It was always a love of the directness, the intentionality, the planning, the not having to fiddle back and forth. Oh, I like to do this, or oh, I don't really like that, or I don't know, you can pick. And so, not as a man with a ton of experience, because I'm a man of God. I love my wife. But I have a little bit of experience to be able to say, have a plan, be confident in it, plan it out, all you in there, bro. Let her know that all she has to do is show up pretty and ready to have fun with you. And then when y'all show up, deliver on that. Let her see the sides of you that are serious and have the ability to be real, but also have a ton of fun with her. Bring good energy. Bring a high octane, like I'm ready to have a good time with you. You're gonna have a good time with me. And like, you know, like just lead that thing. I just cringed in my head because I was doing a good job of being very specific, and then I was very like, lead is a little bit more broad, but you know, make recommendations on certain foods, like ask her what she likes, but recommend like, oh, you like that, I noticed this. Like, take the initiative of analyzing stuff about you, stuff about her, stuff about her preferences, and make suggestions. And a girl will notice you being that analytical and that considerate. I think a lot of guys might feel like it comes off as somewhat controlling, but I don't think it actually comes off controlling when you do it in the right way. And the right way is, hey, you say you like this. I noticed this thing right here. This might be a good option for you. Right? It's not saying, hey, you should eat this. Hey, waiter, she's going to have this.
Yeah.
I have a comment. And I do agree with what Nick said. Maybe not in the first date, the first time you're meeting this person, because in my case, I'm an introvert, so I don't like uncertainty. Like if I'm meeting this random person I've never met for the first time, having like a surprise date would not be the best thing for me. But you know, in our case, we did change what we were doing the first time. Like initially we were gonna do the typical, going at a coffee shop, but then when we were still talking, over the app, we realized that we both were lacking like physical exercise. So that's when we said, you know, we should do something that is a little bit more physically active. And that's when we decided to go to a place where we were able to kayak and do these other things as well. But then we went on a second date, and on the third date is when he did like the surprise date. And I thought that was actually pretty cute. And in that case, it was better for me because I already knew him, you know, I really liked him. So I enjoy it better, the surprise aspect for it. But I wouldn't say the first time you're meeting this random person, but definitely you can do it like in the following days.
Yeah, that's fair. To be fair, like if I was setting up a coffee date with a girl, I told her like, oh yeah, I know this coffee shop, da 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 da. Or like with Shelly, you know, it was like, oh yeah, we both need to exercise. Like, yeah, we can go and do this activity right over here, you know. But I do maintain that. I suggested, hey, we can go do this thing. You know, I text some of my guys and I'm like, yo, what's like a good outdoor activity to do? And they said, oh, you know, Wakaiba Springs. Fellas, this is why you need guys around you so they can make recommendations and get advice from guys in relationships because they've done a million dates. They can give you suggestions. Nick, you had something?
Just make sure your friends are wise. So we're talking about giving advice to guys looking to date, or just dating in general advice right now.
It can be looking to date. I think that right now there's a lot of guys that need help on the looking to date part, but then even like it's surprising how many guys I've met that like they went on 3 dates with a girl and then just after the third date it's like, hey, sorry, not really that interested.
So I think maybe that's a good thing to talk about a little bit is, let's say you got the date, great, good job. Now what things should you be avoiding?
Ooh.
Or like what advice you have once you got the date to not blunder it?
Yo.
Besides the basics of religion, politics, all the money or whatever, we're ignoring those like easy ones. What are some things you shouldn't do?
Man, so
and what things to look out for?
I think this is probably one of the best things that I did too. Oh man, you guys, do this. I'm telling you, do this, guys. When you are setting up that first date, or when you are, doing your first few dates, like establish boundaries with the girl beforehand. Like whether it's before the first date or if it's after the first date, maybe the second date, and it's like, because I think all of us know that there's sort of some of these ideas of like, oh, on the first date it's like talk and maybe you can hug, and then on the second date it's like, oh, whatever, and then on the third date maybe you kiss. Fellas, I would say establish boundaries beforehand, because I love you. That was something I did with all these dates. Is I said, hey, I have a list of boundaries that I'm very serious about adhering to. And like, if you're not okay with this, that's fine, but I'm not comfortable showing up on a date unless like we respect these things. And I was adamant about it with like, to the point where a lot of, even Shally did it as well, like they were checking in with me saying, hey, like, I want to make sure I'm not crossing that boundary. And I think it's such a shift that now, as the guy, you have the girl checking in on your boundaries instead of her having to worry about, oh, is he gonna like try and like touch my butt, or is he gonna like do something that I'm uncomfortable with? So you create a safe space for her, you show that you're a man of discipline, like, and so it knocks out a bunch at the same time. So fellas, highly encourage. If you're gonna propose a date, like tell her, like let her know the boundaries.
That's, yeah.
You know, like total Uno reverse card.
It's good. It's a beautiful
I
thought.
think that's great. Okay. So what are some good boundaries?
Good boundaries. We can kind of ping pong these if you want. I have a list, but we can ping pong it. That way I open up the list. I would say the biggest boundary that I had was if we're gonna sit, then we need to be across from each other, not next to each other. Because and then if they ask about it, I would say, I want to make sure that, we're not rushing up against each other, we're not stirring up anything too early, and also it allows for better conversation. Like I want to be able to, look into your eyes and, decipher if you're lying to me, in a joking way. And also, I want to be, I think it's good for us to be able to look at each other's body language, so that was one boundary that I had.
Yeah, and if I can say something, I don't remember if you shared that with me because he sent me a list of boundaries, and I thought it did come out of guard, but I was like, this makes sense. But I don't remember if you told me back then before we met in person or when we met in person. But you actually told me that I have these boundaries because my love language is physical touch. So it's like you recognizing, your weaknesses and knowing that if I do a lot of physical touch, it can maybe trigger something prematurely. And it was a way for you to also guard yourself and your heart. So I thought that was very good too.
That's true. I forgot about that. No, that's really good memory. Yeah. And that was definitely a thing. And I think that's really important because no guy actually has to say that my love language is physical touch. Every guy's love language is physical touch. But I think clearing the air on that and saying, hey, look, let's put it out in the open. I'm a guy. Like, yeah, I'm gonna want to, hug you. I might, if you have some nice assets, I'm gonna maybe want to appreciate those. And so
Oh Lord. Oh, loud. Loud.
And so I think being, just putting the horse out there in as honest, and also as, I think there was some class and culture in the way that I did it, and acknowledging, hey, look, this is going to be a thing for me. Like, I'd rather you be there. That way, it's good for me. It's good for you, but mainly it's good for me. And like, I think that also did a lot in making the ladies know, like, okay, cool. So he's like looking out for himself and me, but mostly himself in that. I don't know if anybody else had a boundary in mind.
I mean, I think there's some general boundaries, but again, I think Shally make a good point is learning your weaknesses and putting boundaries in place to guard yourself from those weaknesses. And in addition to that, the boundary, what you're trying not to do is not your boundary. So like, an easy one we're gonna take is, let's say sex, for example. If you're saying, I don't wanna have sex pre-marriage, your boundary is not don't have sex. You want to get as far away from what you're not trying to do as possible. So if your boundary is not have sex, the boundary needs to be well before that. You want boundaries and then backup boundaries, so that way there's grace. Like let's say, so like one boundary we have is we won't kiss indoors. We will only kiss outside. So if we were to mess up and I were to, let's say we made out right here on the couch, right? That would be breaking a boundary. Did we sin? No, we didn't do anything wrong. We haven't done anything outside of, we haven't had sex. But that way we have grace and the ability to rectify it. So we messed up, but we're not in trouble. We have now time to make sure this doesn't happen again. But if you put the boundary right at sex and that's it, you guys are canoodling in bed, naked or whatever, you're not doing anything, but you're putting it right there, and then you messed up. There's no, now you messed up, you fell. So like if you're towing a line, if you're worried about crossing a line, the worst thing you can do is tow it.